At this point, this pursuit is going to be over with. He's getting out. He's running across, you can see. But this is over. I mean, he's not going to go very far. He is not going to go very far. With law enforcement there, he can try to dodge and weave all he wants.
On June 9th, 2021, a 49-year-old husband would kill his wife after 10 years of marriage and refuse to give up her body.
Sure, she's not here with us no more. But let us find her body and put her at rest.
While authorities search for Wiggins, who they say is armed and dangerous.
We looking, baby girl, we gonna find you one way or the other. That's right. One way or the other, baby girl, we looking.
Kiara's family says they'll keep searching.
I need closure. Yeah. That's what I need. And I am not gonna be satisfied until I get some closure.
The man you see here, leading police on a dangerous highway chase, is 49-year-old Carl Wiggins. But this isn't just any pursuit. It's the desperate flight of a husband tied to the disappearance of his wife of 10 years. On June 9th, 2021, Carl's wife would vanish from her home in the small town of Roseboro, North Carolina. For weeks, her family prayed she would return, but 2 months later, their worst fears were confirmed. It wasn't until 2 months later that her body was discovered in a wooded area off Boykin Bridge Road, so badly decomposed she was nearly unrecognizable. And yet, the horror didn't end there. What investigators uncovered next painted a chilling picture of betrayal and violence. Carl's criminal record, his disturbing behavior, and the cold way he distanced himself from his wife revealed a story far darker than anyone could have imagined. This is the life and death of Kiara Wiggins.
Whatever we have to do, if we had to get out there and walk these wooded areas, whatever, we know she's somewhere out there. And we coming, baby, we're gonna find you. We might not do it today, but we coming and we gonna find you.
Kiara Denise Wiggins was born on July 19, 1982, in Clinton, North Carolina. Affectionately nicknamed Boo Boo by her loved ones, Kiara was the fifth child in her family and the one everyone described as the sweetest. From childhood, she had a bright smile that made people feel instantly comfortable around her. She attended Clinton High School before going to work at Smithfield Packing Company, a meat processing facility that employed many locals. But Kiara's life wasn't just about work. She was deeply rooted in her church, St. Peter United Holy Church, where she had accepted Christ as her savior when she was young. Family members recall that she adored her nieces and nephews, treating them as if they were her own children. Her sister, Judy Murray, later said she was a sweetheart, the kindest girl you'd ever meet. She had a big heart to go with that big smile. That was until a man stepped into her world, bringing with him a darkness she never expected. By her late 20s, Kiara met 49-year-old Carl Wiggins, a man 10 years older than her. Despite the noticeable age gap, their relationship moved quickly, and before long, the two were married. They built their life together in Roseboro, North Carolina, a tiny, tight-knit town of just over 1,200 residents, where neighbors often waved from porches and everyone seemed to know one another's business. Their wedding was small but memorable, with photos showing beaming smiles and promises of a happy future. Together, they shared a home and, for more than a decade, a marriage that looked steady from the outside. To those who knew them casually, Carl and Kiara seemed like a stable couple. They attended community gatherings, went to church, and maintained a home that reflected years of shared effort. Friends and neighbors described them as quiet, hardworking, and committed, the kind of couple who had weathered life's storms and still stood side by side. But behind the closed doors of their Roseboro home, things were far more complicated. Kiara's family and close friends later revealed that tension often simmered beneath the surface. Arguments would flare, only to be brushed aside for the sake of appearances. Kiara, known for her warmth and generosity, often kept her struggles private, unwilling to let others see the cracks forming in her marriage. Carl, on the other hand, was described as controlling at times, with a temper that grew harder to ignore as the years went by. The marriage that once looked like a source of stability gradually began to unravel. Those closest to Kiara sensed that something darker was brewing, but no one could have anticipated how dark it would be. Kiara was known to her loved ones as warm, dependable, and deeply family-oriented. She never went a single day without checking in with her mother or sister, Judy Murray, often calling just to share updates about her day. So when the daily calls suddenly stopped, everyone knew something was wrong. The last confirmed sighting of Kiara came on June 9, 2021 at the home she shared with Carl in Roseboro. From that day forward, her phone went silent. A red flag since Kiara normally spoke with her family every single day. She never missed calls. Her sudden silence immediately raised concern.
39-year-old Wiggins missing in June after no one heard from her, saying it was very unusual for her to not talk to family for more than a few days.
When Judy tried reaching out, Carl brushed her off, claiming Kiara was staying with a friend. But when Judy pressed for a name, Carl snapped in anger and refused to answer.
He said, he tells me she's with some friend. I said, well, tell me the friend name so I can contact them to get my sister. And then he just blew up.
His hostile reaction only deepened the family's suspicions. Something felt off, and they began to sense Carl was hiding more than he was willing to admit. Over the next several days, the family tried everything: calling, texting, even checking in with Kiara's other friends and coworkers, but no one had heard from her. Carl, who should have been the first person searching, instead grew more defensive each time the family questioned him. He offered no updates, no reassurance, only excuses. But soon, the family was pushed to take the next desperate step.
Looking, baby girl, we're gonna find you one way or the other. That's right. One way or the other, baby girl, we looking.
Kiara's family says they'll keep searching.
I need closure. That's what I need. And I am not gonna be satisfied until I get some closure.
By June 18th, after more than a week without contact, Kiara's family filed a missing persons report. Their fears had already begun to harden into grim certainty. Judy later explained that they knew something wasn't right, but just didn't know what it was.
Here's what the family tells us about Wiggins. They say he and Kiara were married for about 10 years, but they didn't know him very well. They last saw Wiggins on Saturday, where they confronted him about Kiara's disappearance. Wiggins responding to their questions by saying she was with a friend.
There was one problem. No one could find Carl either. He wasn't at the house. He wasn't answering calls, and neighbors hadn't seen him in days. Just like Kiara, he had seemingly disappeared into thin air. The search for Carl revealed something far darker than anyone expected. When police tried locating Carl, they discovered he was already in trouble. On June 17th, investigators learned he had stolen a black 2003 Ford Excursion with the license plate KM2969. Warrants were issued for felony larceny and possession of a stolen vehicle, on top of him being wanted for questioning in his wife's disappearance. But then, a single clue brought the case into sharp focus. Investigators also found Kiara's own car, a silver Oldsmobile, abandoned in Bladen County. It was the first physical sign that something terrible had happened to her. Meanwhile, Carl was missing in action until June 23rd, when everything came to a head. That evening, Carl was spotted driving the stolen Ford Excursion along Interstate 40, but when police tried to pull him over, he did something unexpected. He took off, hitting the gas. What followed was a 35-mile high-speed chase weaving through counties, endangering drivers and forcing officers to deploy spike strips. Eventually, Carl lost control, slamming into a guardrail before bailing out of the vehicle and trying to run on foot.
Oh, he's crashed into the guard barrier. I don't know if maybe he hit a tack strip beforehand. At this point, this pursuit is going to be over with. He's getting out, he's running across, you can see. But this is over. I mean, he's not going to go very far. He is not going to go very far. With law enforcement there, he can try to dodge and weave all he wants. I got to get back over there, you guys, so just bear with me for a minute.
Several officers immediately gave chase, sprinting after him as he darted across the highway and disappeared into the thick woods nearby. The pursuit was tense, with police fearing what he might do if he managed to slip away. But Carl wouldn't run very far. When Carl was caught, he was immediately arrested and taken to the Sampson County Detention Center. His capture brought a wave of hope to Kiara's family. who believed he would finally reveal where she was.
Thanking God that they find him. Hope he will give them some release and tell them where she at.
Laura Beeman is Kiara's mom and believes the 39-year-old is in extreme danger. She says Wiggins' arrest is key to finding her daughter.
When they got married, you couldn't see her without seeing him. If you went to the house to visit her, he didn't want you at his house.
For a brief moment, they thought the nightmare was nearing its end. But when detectives questioned him, Carl shut down completely. He demanded a lawyer and refused to answer a single question about Kiara's disappearance. That silence left investigators staring at a chilling puzzle: a young mother who had suddenly vanished, a husband on the run, and no body to prove what had happened.
Well, Carl Wiggins is asking for a lawyer before he's willing to talk. The sheriff tells us in the meantime they're going to be searching that truck he was found in to see if that gives them any clues about where Kiara Wiggins is. I spoke with her mom briefly today. She and the family are hoping Carl Wiggins can give them any information about where her daughter is.
With nothing but time working against them, search teams began combing through the vast 962 square miles of Sampson County. Fields, woods, creeks, and abandoned properties, hoping to find even the smallest clue. The effort grew into one of the largest searches the area had seen, with volunteers, dogs, and drones joining law enforcement in the desperate hunt. But just when it seemed the case was slipping into cold case territory, a grim discovery changed everything. On August 23, 2021, search crews focused on a wooded area near Boykin Bridge Road, about 10 miles from the Roseboro home Kiara shared with Carl. At first glance, the site looked ordinary. But then, officers noticed something odd. Patches of dirt that appeared to have been recently disturbed, almost as if someone had dug and then quickly tried to cover it up. To confirm their suspicions, they brought in cadaver dogs. Within minutes, one of the dogs alerted on the spot, signaling the possible presence of human remains. Investigators began to dig. What they unearthed next would confirm the family's worst fears. Buried in a shallow grave was the decomposed body of a woman. Detectives immediately suspected it was Kiara. Clothing and a tattoo on the forearm helped her family make a preliminary identification. Her sister, Jackie Williams, later said,
"They don't know for sure, but they do have a high possibility that that's my sister because of a tattoo on her forearm."
The remains were sent to the medical examiner's office, and by August 25th, the Sampson County Sheriff's Office confirmed the identity. The body was indeed 39-year-old Kiara Denise Wiggins. Her cause of death was ruled homicide, though due to decomposition, investigators did not immediately release all the details. Still, the discovery was enough to change the course of the investigation and bring new charges against her husband, Carl Wiggins. Meanwhile, Carl, who had already been in custody for felony larceny and the multi-county police chase, now faced a far more serious charge: first-degree murder. The Sampson County District Attorney's Office wasted no time in upgrading his charges. Little did the public know, Kiara's disappearance was not just a tragic case of domestic violence. It was a tragedy rooted in a long history of Carl's criminal behavior and instability. And his record would only deepen suspicions. Court documents reveal that he was a habitual felon, with charges dating back nearly 30 years, including breaking and entering, resisting an officer, and possession of a firearm by a felon. When the news of Kiara's body being found spread, the community was devastated. For weeks, her family had clung to hope that somehow she would be discovered alive, but the confirmation of her death shattered that hope completely. Her mother wept, saying her daughter had not deserved such a fate, while her sister admitted she was left with nothing but grief and unanswered questions about why it had happened. But the pain extended far beyond her family. Community members gathered near the site where her body was discovered, organizing candlelight vigils and prayer circles in her honor. Friends remembered Kiara as someone selfless and giving, a woman who would do anything for the people she loved, and who always kept her faith at the center of her life. In the days that followed, the tragedy struck a deeper chord across the country. Local activists highlighted her death as yet another painful example of domestic violence that goes unseen. until it ends in tragedy. Churches hosted prayer services, and neighbors left flowers, balloons, and photos at makeshift memorials. For those who knew Kiara best, the loss was more than personal. It was a wound to the entire community.
I'm just going to remember that smile right there. That's what I'm going to remember to get through my hard days and my hard times.
Memories of Kiara Wiggins' smile is what's holding her family together.
Wherever she was, she always had a smile on her face.
That's all I can do is remember that smile, because if I don't, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to start crying, and I don't want to cry.
As details unfolded in court documents, more disturbing facts about Carl and Kiara's marriage came to light. Testimonies from family and friends painted Carl as a man who isolated Kiara from loved ones. Relatives admitted they didn't know him very well, despite his being married to Kiara for 10 years. Investigators later learned of frequent arguments between Carl and Kiara. Some revolved around infidelity suspicions, while others were about Carl's refusal to work or contribute to the household. Family members said Kiara had been considering leaving him, which may have been the trigger that pushed Carl over the edge. And ever since then, the family has said that all they want is one thing: the truth. When Carl Wiggins appeared in Sampson County District Court on murder charges shortly after the funeral, during his first appearance, he requested a court-appointed attorney. Prosecutors argued strongly against bail, citing his history as a habitual felon and the fact that he had already tried to run from police once. Carl was ordered to remain in custody without bond. For Kiara's family, this was just the beginning of a long road to justice. They were relieved Carl could no longer run, but they also knew that trials take time, and that Carl had already shown he was willing to stay silent about the full truth of what happened to their loved one. Carl Wiggins sat in the Sampson County Detention Center awaiting trial. Prosecutors made it clear they intended to pursue first-degree murder charges to the fullest extent of the law. During pre-trial hearings, Carl remained mostly silent, often shuffling into the courtroom in shackles, his eyes fixed on the floor. His court-appointed attorney pushed for more time to review evidence, while prosecutors laid out a case that painted Carl as manipulative, controlling, and violent. His criminal record spoke volumes. A man with a decades-long history of crime who now stood accused of the ultimate betrayal, taking the life of his wife. But what investigators discovered next would change everything. Court records revealed disturbing new details about the night Kiara vanished. Neighbors reported hearing shouting coming from the Wiggins home in Roseboro around the evening of June 9, 2021. Phone records showed Kiara stopped communicating that same time. Family members, who usually heard from her daily, grew increasingly concerned when texts and calls went unanswered. Meanwhile, GPS data from Carl's phone placed him near Boykin Bridge Road, the same area where Kiara's body was eventually found. Investigators argued this was the smoking gun, proof that Carl had not only killed Kiara, but deliberately hidden her remains. Carl, however, continued to deny involvement. He never offered an explanation, never expressed remorse, and never revealed why Kiara's body was left buried in the woods. The prosecution leaned on this pattern of secrecy, arguing that Carl's refusal to help in the search for his missing wife and his subsequent high-speed chase was proof of guilt. The defense, however, painted a different picture. They suggested Kiara may have left the home voluntarily and that Carl panicked when attention turned toward him. But despite the seriousness of the case, no official updates have confirmed a trial verdict or sentencing as of the time of this case being reported. This lingering uncertainty has left Kiara's family and community in painful limbo, still waiting for justice, still carrying the weight of unanswered questions. Community leaders also spoke out, calling Kiara's case a tragic reminder of how domestic violence can escalate without warning. Churches organized awareness events. Women's advocacy groups began pushing for stronger protections for abuse survivors, using Kiara's story as a rallying cry. And ever since then, her name has been a symbol of resilience, reminding families across North Carolina of the dangers of silence in abusive relationships. Kiara's funeral was held in late August 2021, just days after her remains were identified. It was a deeply emotional service attended by family, friends, church members, and the Clinton and Roseboro communities. Her family described her as a bright light taken too soon. Church leaders spoke of her devotion to her faith, while nieces and nephews tearfully remembered her as their second mom and lovingly called her Aunt Boo Boo, who always spoiled them with love. Friends recalled her contagious laugh, warm hugs, and the joy she brought into every room she entered. Hundreds came to pay their respects, classmates from Clinton High School, coworkers from Smithfield Packing Company, and members of St. Peter United Holy Church, where she had been a member since childhood. Her casket was adorned with flowers in her favorite colors, while gospel hymns filled the church as her community laid her to rest. Noticeably absent from the service was Carl Wiggins, barred by law from attending as he sat incarcerated on murder charges. The grief was overwhelming, but her family found some comfort in knowing that Kiara was finally at peace and that the fight for justice had begun. Kiara Wiggins was a daughter, a sister, and a mother. She deserved a future filled with love and peace, not to have her life stolen by the very man who promised to love her. Until we confront the reality of abuse and demand accountability, tragedies like hers will keep happening. So, I want to hear from you. What do you make of Carl's refusal to cooperate? Was his silence a sign of guilt, arrogance, or something far more sinister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And above all, let's honor Kiara's memory by making sure her story is never forgotten.